Now, almost 30 million sail each year upon the sea, but can I find that special cruise exactly right for me? We can help. Welcome back to my travel window. Our goal on this channel is to motivate you to want to travel and then to give you the tools to help make it happen. In our last episode, we talked about the differences between travel, in this case to Europe, either by land or by sea. Today what we're going to do is focus on the sea portion. In fact, this will be the first of a 3-episode series on cruising. So today we're going to focus on what are the different kinds of cruises, and secondly, how do you go about picking a cruise line? And we'll do some objective things, and then I'll offer some personal opinion. In our second episode, we're going to talk about how do you choose a cabin? What are the different choices? When do you book a cruise? How do you go about it? What are the key dates you need to know? And then in the third episode, we're going to discover the 10 best locations that we found that we use to do research for planning our trips. And then we're going to talk about our experience of actually traveling during the pandemic and what it looks like moving forward and the considerations that you might want to have in that regard. So stay tuned for the 3-part episode, How to Cruise. River cruises are small, generally carrying 75 to 250 passengers. They travel relatively short distances daily with a focused menu and entertainment options. They travel in daytime along rivers and canals. Viking is the most well-known of these. We've never personally done one of these, so we'll not discuss them, although we have friends that recommend them. For further research on what they're like, I'd recommend the Tips for Travelers YouTube site by Gary Bembridge. I'll include a link in the description below. Ocean cruises are much larger, with the mainstream ships carrying between 2,000 and 5,000 passengers. They typically travel at night, spend most days in port, with typically 1 to 2 sea days thrown in. They have a vast array of accommodation, food, and entertainment options, often a destination resort in and of themselves. My wife and I have had the good fortune to experience half a dozen of these ships in 5 different locales and have spent about 60 days at sea, enough to have developed a fairly knowledgeable opinion. In the course of a 10-minute video, I'm not going to have enough time to cover all the options for how to choose a cruise line, so I'm simply going to walk you through the process we went through and how we came up with our yes, no, and maybe list of cruise lines. To be honest, someone else picked our first cruise and invited us to join them. It was a fall colors trip, sailing out of New York Harbor at night, up the Atlantic, down the St. Lawrence Seaway to Quebec. The very first night was magical, watching the Manhattan skyline fade behind us as we sailed by the Statue of Liberty and under the Verrazano Bridge. I knew I was hooked from that moment. The line they chose was Princess. Since we've taken 2 more Princess ships and are planning another, we obviously like them. This then became our benchmark for further trips. Over the years, I would guess we've spoken with 100 or more cruisers, constantly asking for anecdotal feedback on which cruise lines they like and why. It turns out that the U.S. News & World Report produces an annual report of cruise lines along with some characteristics of that particular line. They have the best ships for families, best for certain areas, best luxury lines, for example. We focused on their category of the best value for the money. This year's list is similar to previous ones and has 8 cruise lines on the list. We further winnowed this list based on what we've known or heard from others. Our yes list includes 5 of the top 6 lines on the U.S. News list: Celebrity, Holland America, Royal Caribbean, Norwegian, and Princess. We've sailed on all of these except Norwegian and are booked on it for the summer of 2022. All of our other 4 trips were excellent, with the major distinguishing factor for us being the destinations rather than ships or cruise lines. Celebrity was my favorite overall. Royal had my favorite ship. Holland America was the smallest and my favorite overall size. And Princess was just comfortable in every way. These plus Norwegian would be on my short list, particularly for a first cruise, and I would recommend them to you. When you do find a ship, check out Cruise Watch, shown here, for details on how it compares to others. Very useful. Our no list includes Carnival, which is targeted for a younger audience, has a reputation as a party ship, and generally focuses on the Caribbean, which is not of great interest to us. We also exclude MSC and Costa, which are the two lowest rated ones of the U.S. News group. In any rating I've seen of the top lines, these always rank at or near the bottom in guest satisfaction, with their greatest asset being that they're cheaper. This also matches any anecdotal experience we've had from others. If we say which cruise should we not go on, those are the ones that make the list. One of the newest lines, Virgin Voyages, has set out to break the cruise mold, offering a very different boutique-like experience. We investigated, decided it was not for us. The Tips for Travelers channel has a good review of how it is different and who might like it. Our maybe in the future list would include Disney if we're traveling with grandkids, and the ocean-going part of Viking. We also have some interest in the more old-fashioned, i.e. more formal, British cruise lines like P&O or Fred Olsen. In the next episode, we'll discuss the booking process. Until then, I leave you with the story of this picture. In the early days of cruising, the best ships were built in Belfast, Northern Ireland. This included the Titanic. When ships were completed, they rolled out into the water along the path you see in this picture. The factory has now been replaced by one of the finest tourist attractions in the world called the Titanic Experience. I recommend it highly. As you finish the tour, you see our Princess ship in the dock, right where the Titanic would have rolled out. Amazingly, our ship was of very similar size to the Titanic. How very far we've come, and yet not so far. Until next time, happy travels.